Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Lose, Live, Learn. I am so excited for you to watch today's episode because I have had the absolute pleasure today of interviewing Jenna Teague and Ashley Looker. These two ladies make up the brand, I guess, the company F Perfect. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that my motto has been for a while now, hashtag F Perfect. I even had the shirts made because for me, I was so tired of trying to live the perfectionist lifestyle. I didn't even know I was a perfectionist until a few years ago because it wasn't showing up in my life in a way that was causing me really any problems. But in the last 3.5 years or so, I found that perfectionism was showing up quite regularly. It'd actually been showing up since I was a kid. And I was tired of it. I got really tired of it. Tired of trying to keep this perfect show reel on social media. And I came across these ladies on Instagram and we started connecting because we have such similar messages. F Perfect is a really small part of my brand. It's something I talk about. I talk about perfectionism, but these guys, this is their thing, right? This is their jam. And so I am so excited to introduce you to these ladies and for you to hear all about how it is they are overcoming perfectionism. And they're also going to be sharing with you 3 ways in which you can actually start to shed the perfectionist bone in your body pretty much immediately, right? And they're not like super complicated, they don't cost any money, they are just things that you need to practice. So without any further delay, I want to welcome you to this week's episode and let's get started.
You're watching Lose, Live, Learn, the show which brings you real life strategies to help you live your healthiest life, free from guilt, shame and dieting. I'm your host, Melanie Knights. Everyone, thank you for joining me for another week's episode of Lose, Live, Learn. This week, I have the absolute pleasure of introducing you to 2 very amazing ladies who I happened to find on Instagram through a hashtag, no less, because you guys know that my motto is F Perfect, and there I am scrolling through Instagram looking at the hashtag, and I was like, there's new people on here using this hashtag, and so of course I went stalking and came across Jenna and Ashley. And so I'm really thrilled to have the lovely Jenna Teague and Ashley Looker joining me today from F Perfect. Thank you so much for being here, ladies.
Thank you so much for having us.
You're so welcome. And I have loved following along the last few weeks. It's really not been that long that I've been following you, but I was like, as soon as I saw, I was like, these ladies have to come on Lose, Live, Learn because there's so much in common, so much to talk about. So I would love for you to just start by introducing yourselves to my viewers and just tell them a bit about what you do and who you are.
Yeah, definitely. Just again, thank you so much for having us. Thank you for being the F Perfect trailblazer, clearing the path for us to join in on the goodness. A little bit about us. We're both coaches. I started out as a psychotherapist. That's what my background is. And then a couple years ago, got into health coaching. And now I do a little bit of everything: therapy, health coaching, business coaching. And Ashley and I connected through my previous podcast. And she was a guest on the show. And then we just totally hit it off. And the rest is history. Now here we are.
Yeah, when we were like looking for a way to collaborate, we're like, how can let's do something together, because we were just vibing and we just love each other. So F Perfect was born. It just happened so seamlessly and so effortlessly. It's been amazing.
And then we found you, and you know, it's all just been a lot of like kismet, I guess.
Yeah, it really has.
Yeah, don't you find that? Because I think I said to you last time we spoke that I read all the time about entrepreneurs finding each other on Instagram, and I hear them talk about like on podcasts. I hear them say, oh, you know, I have really good friends. We have coffee chats. And I'm like, does that really happen? And it's like, yes, it does.
It really
and there is so much to be said for having kind of women around you who have a similar message. You don't have to be exactly the same, but just having similar messages and wanting to put out into the world something that is just amazing. And that's what you ladies are doing.
Yeah.
And you know,
You do.
thank you. And your podcast, you've just started the F Perfect podcast and you've just run an F Perfect challenge.
Yes.
Now, before we get into all of that, I want to know what made you decide to take on perfection, because it's like that beast that rears its ugly head every so often, and we all suffer from it. But the more I've listened, because you guys obviously are focusing entirely on perfection, and so as I've listened and read your posts, I'm thinking it's always been there for me, but I didn't know it. So I'd love to know why you decided to take on perfectionism and how it's shown up for you.
Yeah.
You want to go, Jenna?
Sure. I mean, I can tell you that, you know, for me, perfectionism is really familiar because it's been a part of my journey from a really young age, but it's just one lens to view a lot of the issues that we tend to struggle with as people and as women. So to me, we're framing things in the lens of perfectionism, but so many of these struggles are relatable to so many people, not just people who currently identify as perfectionists or recovering perfectionists like Ashley and I. But yeah, for me, it's just been something that I've had an awareness of in my life from a young age, you know, that pressure to be perfect in so many areas, like as a little kid, how my room looked and how my homework looked and the grades I got and what part I got in the play. And, you know, and then just as I've gotten older, I've seen that spiral out into the ways that I relate with people, the ways I relate with myself and my body, you know, my career, everything. And it's just been really helpful for me personally and in putting F Perfect together and putting it out into the world to see that if we look at it through the lens of perfection, it becomes a little bit easier to tackle because there's a through line. There's like a path that we can follow. And so, yeah.
I know for me too, because I've been a perfectionist my entire life too. Me and Jenna have very similar stories. But I think for me too, I've seen my perfectionism kind of amplify once I started my business. And like once because it becomes your baby and you're obviously so passionate about it and you want to reach the right people and you want your message to come across. And I found myself getting a little crazy in my business, my perfectionism, because it's just that important to you and you want to make sure that you're reaching the right people. And like I said, getting your message across, but man, it can kind of stop you dead in your tracks too. So it's been a really interesting balance for me, but I think I'm coming back out of it now, especially meeting Jenna and, you know, always having F Perfect at the forefront has been so important for me in my life personally too.
And it totally calls us out sometimes. Like we'll be working on business stuff and we'll have to say like, oh my God, it's my perfectionism again, totally coming up. I'm doing it right now. So
yeah, I know 100% what you mean. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I think perfectionism has always been there for me, but I don't think it ever impacted my life negatively. And that was because up until I became a mother and around just before that, I started working on my business, those two things are the main places where perfectionism has shown up. So for the last 3.5 years, well, not for that as long, but up until about 6 months to a year ago, perfectionism was constant, and it still rears its ugly head now. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important thing, is because when you're running a business, it is your baby. It's like this, and when you're an online entrepreneur as well, because you know, you're plagued with numbers. I just shared the other day, Facebook sends me a message and a notification saying, you got new likes this week. Great, good work. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Facebook. But that's not really like that. That's not important. But it's so much about numbers, like how many people on your email list, how many people are subscribing, how many people like that picture. And I love social media because without it, we would not be here having this conversation, but it can play such a huge part in our perfectionism because you'll look at other people. And we talked about this when we connected about F Perfect. I said a few years ago, the way I used to think, if I had seen other people using a hashtag, I would have got really defensive, like they've stolen my idea. But it's like, that doesn't even cross my mind now, because we all have a story and a purpose. And it's just such a small part of my business. But it's like, what your business is about. And I love it, because I love hearing your stories and how things show up for you. And just recently in your challenge, I was reading the emails as I got them each day, and you shared 7 different topics, and some of them, you know, for like body and body image and food and things like that. But the things that really stood out to me were the topics that weren't around food and body. It was the topics about people pleasing. That one was huge, because I think that was like very early on.
Yeah.
And I was like reading the, you've talked about having a conversation with someone about where to go for brunch. And instead of saying, this is where I want to go, we go, oh, I don't mind, where do you want to go? And then you have this like constant back and forth, because no one will make a decision. And I was like, I do that. And I know people that do that. And I apologize when I ask someone for help. And so yesterday, as I was traveling here, every time I asked somebody, I was like, I'm not going to say sorry. And I would just ask a question. But the topics that stood out to me were people pleasing. And also you talked a lot about success and purpose. And so with, you know, around the topic of business and creating a business and it showing up in that way, you know, I think it's really important about knowing what you're measuring your success against, and also what your purpose is. Can you share with us a little bit about why you chose those topics? In particular, start with people pleasing. Like, how, you know, what was it that stood out to you about that? Ashley or Jenna, I don't mind, either one.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm going to do it right now and be like, I'm sorry, Ashley, do you want to go? Yeah.
No, Jenna, it's okay. You can go.
Okay. Are you sure?
Are you sure?
Yeah. No, I think people pleasing for me is one of those sneaky ones, right? Like, we don't always see it as tied into a perfectionistic way of thinking or a perfectionistic standard for ourselves. But it's, you know, it's just so sneaky and subtle, because I think as women and as people, but especially women, we're socialized to be people pleasers. Like, we're socialized to make others happy, to put others' needs before our own, you know, to be agreeable, to get along, to be easygoing. Some of us more than others, you know, sort of fall into that expectation. But I think all of us women can relate to that being an expectation. And I think it's really important to look at how that impacts our lives and to see ourselves doing it like you did. Like, you read the email and you're like, oh my God, I'm doing that. I didn't even know I was doing that.
Yeah.
Because that's such an essential first step, is to see and to notice and to have an awareness. Because once we have an awareness, then we can make a conscious choice about whether we're in a situation where we absolutely do want to be the agreeable one for any variety of reasons. We want to, you know, defer to the other person to pick the brunch place, you know, or whether we want to choose to be more assertive and, you know, make that choice in a certain moment. It's just about noticing and empowering ourselves to make decisions. Yeah. And I think people pleasing is such a sticky place.
And I think for me too, where it's often shown up for me is this piece of like likability.
Oh.
Me, as you know, I'm people pleasing in that way too, because I'm a very like, and I posted about this on during the challenge. Like, I'm a very like energetic, bubbly, positive person. That's just like who I am. But there are days where I'm not feeling that way, you know, but I feel like it's expected of me to like show up and be that anyway. And that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself, you know, when I'm having an off day or I don't feel good, and it's like, put on the happy face, you know, do what people expect of you. And that just, it's not authentic and it doesn't feel right. You know, it's not to say that you have to go out and be like, you know, totally down in the dumps or whatever. But I think that's been also a balance for me and kind of a practice for sure.
Yeah, I agree that I think it's definitely a practice, because when, I'm sure you guys will agree, when you are building a business and a lot of what you do is online and you're posting images and stories, it has that element of part of you want to show up authentically and as is. But then there's the other part of you that's like, today I'm just not feeling it. And so I love Insta stories for that, because I will try and share. If I'm having a day where I'm struggling with something, I will come on and I'll talk about it, and I'll be like, but hey, like, this is, you know, this is how I feel today. It's one day. And there's always that element. But the people pleasing one, it's interesting to me how many women do it. And I think we look at it in a one way, like we look at it, you know, saying yes to people all the time, taking things on, even when in the back of our mind, we're like, I really don't have the space in my schedule to do this. But I didn't even think about it in relation to like the brunch. Like, that didn't occur to me. And I was like, I do that because part of me is like, no, you choose, because I want to please you. I want you to. And I didn't even see myself as a people pleaser. I was like, damn it, I'm doing it. So, you know, it's, I loved it so much for that, because I realized so much. I know women who are people pleasers, and I know this in particular is going to resonate so much with my viewers. But for me, I was like, I've got to think about those things I'm saying so that I can move forward with that, because sometimes, like, no, I want to go here.
Yeah, I just want to say it. I just want to tell you this is what I want. And, you know, I think with the people pleasing, what you were saying, Ashley, is like, our worth gets tied into whether people are pleased with us and whether they like us. So on those days when you feel like, I don't want to show up as like bubbly cheerleader, happy everything, one of the biggest blocks is, what if I get a reaction from people that they're not happy with me?
Yes, exactly.
And can I tolerate that, you know?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's, I think there's a fear piece of like, oh, what will people do? Will they won't like me anymore, or they're going to talk shit about me, or they're going to, you know, who knows? Like, you get
what's wrong with Ashley today? She's like acting so weird. Yeah,
exactly. So, but again, like I said before, it's a practice, and it's more important to me to do that, to be authentic, than to be inauthentic and put on the mask and play the game. You know, it's not worth it to me. It's like it chips away at who I authentically am, I feel like, personally. Yeah,
I would agree. It definitely does. I think those instances when you don't feel like you're being authentic, it's those moments where you leave just feeling very drained, I would say. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's like when you're with those people who maybe aren't authentic themselves, it rubs off. Like, it's like this, It rubs off on you, because then you're thinking, well, now I need to not be, like, I can't be authentic. And, you know, I think that's something that's so critical, is when you're around people that aren't showing up, it rubs off on you and you feel like you can't. And it's like this constant snowball, which is, you know, one of the reasons I love being involved with women who are showing up in some way. It doesn't mean we're all perfect, obviously, perfect, but you know, we are practicing that. And if we're showing up, because I use the word authentic a lot, and I think some people are like, oh, what does it mean? It feels a bit like weird to say it, like, what, you're telling me that I'm inauthentic or I'm lying? And it's like, no, it's just about understanding what makes you you, and things that you can't change about yourself, like things that you shouldn't change about yourself. Like, I'm very happy to say I'm an introvert. Like, I know that. I like people, but I also like my own space. And I'm, you know, for years as a kid, I wanted to change that. I thought there was something wrong with me because I wasn't like the outgoing type. And I see that quite a lot with women that I work with, is that they have this thing, oh, well, if I could do this, if I was more bubbly, as you were saying, like, but then, you know, it's the same. There's an expectation for you to always be bubbly. You know, it's give and take.
Yeah.
I love
it. And I think there's such a powerful permission that you give others in showing up authentically. Like, I noticed that about your Insta stories, Melanie, is like, you're so real, and it's just like you in your life. It's not filtered, like literally not filtered, although sometimes you do put on the cute filters, like the ears and such. But I mean, it really just is such a refreshing departure from most of what we're scrolling through in our feeds, and, you know, reinforcing all of the expectations and all of that perfectionistic viewpoint, that when you come in with this like fresh breeze of authenticity, it's like, whoa, okay, so I can actually be like that. So not everyone out there is perfect, like airbrushed, living a perfect life with their perfect, you know, like, It's so important to put those messages out there, particularly in this online entrepreneurship, social media, comparison ridden, space that we're in right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've really struggled with that too, especially when it comes to like the success piece too, and what it means to be successful, and the constant comparing that I can find myself getting into when I'm scrolling, down the Instagram. I'm like, oh man, wow, she looks like she's doing great. Oh gosh, what's wrong with me? Like is what it ends up being, is like, wow, I'm just not where I, need to be. There's something wrong with my path, and how I'm proceeding. So I feel like for me, I have to be really careful with, being on Instagram and comparing myself to other people's highlight reels, because it's not always, you're just posting the best parts a lot of the time. So that's why I think it's so awesome to see Melanie, me and Jenna, just putting it out there to be authentic and be vulnerable too. The permission piece is huge.
Vulnerable, one of my favorite words. I love Brene Brown. So like, I was reading on the plane yesterday. I was like staring greatly. I was like, this is the number one way to not get anybody to talk to me. Have that book that nobody wants to talk to me. But yeah, I definitely know what you mean. Like the Instagram reel, the Facebook. And I mean, I'm in a business coaching group, and I remember at the very beginning, our coach saying to us, like, she doesn't read other people's stuff, like her peers. She's like, I read you guys as my, as my coaches. She reads our stuff, but she doesn't read her peer stuff because it gets you into that trap. And it's very easy to do that. So sometimes then there's that people pleasing. Sometimes you feel a bit bad or guilty because you're not reading somebody who you know, and they just put this blog out. I'll throw a like up, but it doesn't necessarily mean I've read it. And I'm like, I'm supporting you in your mission, but I'm not going to read it because I know what that might do to me, especially on those days when I'm in my head.
Yes.
And feeling like I'm a complete failure because I've not got 2 million people subscribed to me on Instagram and stuff like that. But you're so right. Like that scroll through Instagram, and it can be so mindless. You'll just sit there and it's like, oh, I had something to do. And I'm like, how about if I stop doing that, I might get a bit closer to where perhaps it is I believe I should be. But that success thing, I think that's so important, because you talked about success and like how you're measuring that during the challenge. And you talked about, are you using other like external tools to measure your level of success? And again, this is something I talk about with the women who are in my Facebook group and things like that, because again, it's very easy to get into, I'm not doing what she's doing. My life is just this. I just said a post where we spend so much time saying, I'm just this, I just do that. It's like, no, own your shit. Like whatever, I don't care what you do, but you should own it if it's yours. So how has that come up for you as well? Like with your success, obviously with your businesses, but has it come up in other ways in your life that you've been using external sources to measure your success?
Oh,
Jenna?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I had really fixed beliefs about what my life should look like in order to be worthy or to achieve my potential. And one of the biggest ones was when I originally started out on my path as a psychotherapist, I thought, I'm going to become a doctor. I'm going to become a psychologist, doctor, first doctor in the family, lots of pressure on myself around that. And ultimately, as I went down that path and I was actually in a doctoral program, I realized like, this is not for me. I was about halfway through. And to make that decision to let go of that expectation, I had to grieve that for like years afterwards. Like we get these ideas so ingrained, even if it's not something that big, like a lifelong dream, even if it's about how many followers we should have or how many subscribers on our mailing list or how many people in our programs or, things like that. Like we get so attached to these external benchmarks that we lose sight of how they make us feel internally and how we're feeling along the journey to supposedly get there. And how we feel is so much more important.
Yeah.
Because that's our reality every day.
Yes. And I absolutely, Jenna, yeah, I can relate to everything that Jenna's saying right now. I think one piece for me, another that I'm kind of just realizing too, that success has come up and the expectation of success is like in family and relationships. Because as a woman, I feel like there's been a lot of pressure, or I felt a lot of pressure on me to have children, to get married, to have the house with the white picket fence, to, you know, have this, you know, external expectation of these things. And that's not necessarily what I desire. And I think that that's still one that I'm definitely working on, and I know I'm probably not alone out there, like women, you know, putting that pressure on themselves of like what that looks like, what success looks like in their relationships and in family and things like that. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Jenna. It's more about how you want to feel in your life. And one thing that I've really subscribed to, and I absolutely love this, Gabrielle Bernstein, I think, I do believe said this. She said, measure your success by how much fun you're having. And when I read that, I was like, holy shit, I can do that. Yeah, let's have fun. You know? Like,
Yes.
cool. So
I
yeah,
love that.
it's really helpful for me, you know, because if you're not having fun, what's the point, you know?
Right.
So
Yeah,
And
that
to
makes
me-
so much sense.
yeah.
I feel like that's so in line with like what you talk about, Melanie. Like when I can't even remember if it's like your Insta stories or your newsletters, but when I hear you talk about like, you know, killing yourself through dieting and chasing some like weight goal and believing that, because I've been there, and believing that when I achieve that, then I will be happy. Then all of this hard work and suffering and like beating myself up and hating myself will be worth it. And then I'll somehow magically be able to do and have all the things that I want. You know, what we'll put ourselves through in service of a goal is mind-blowing if we really think about it. Like, how could suffering for years be worth some goal like that? And also the reality is the goal doesn't bring what you think it will.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing is like, have you guys seen, I don't know if you've seen this, I don't know why I'm asking this now, but you may not have seen the movie Embrace by the body image movement, Tarim Brumfitt. Okay, go check that out. But I left that, it's all about body image and about her message to bring women, awareness to women about loving your body versus dieting and hating your body so much. And I walked out of the cinema watching this movie and I was just like, I was in tears, but I was thinking to myself, that was the moment where I kind of reflected on my business. I was like, am I providing the right message? Because I was like, yes, my training is in personal training and nutrition coaching. And, you know, yes, I can help women lose weight or lose fat. But I was like, I have to be more clear on that we're doing it from a place of love and not from a place of anger. Because that was where I spent so much of my time, just hating myself. And as you say, for years, like, almost 15 years I spent just constantly thinking, if I'm thinner, I'll be successful. If I'm thinner, I'll be successful. I wasn't having fun. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
and now I'm like somewhere in the middle of, like, in the last 7 years, of the thinnest I've been and the biggest I've been. I'm somewhere in the middle and I love my body. I can dress up, show up. I'm successful in my own right because I am having fun. I'm enjoying myself. I get to do things I never thought were imaginable. And I think that's really important because as you were saying, Ashley, about like a typical female role, I was speaking to someone recently and she said, oh, I don't have children, so I feel like my life has no purpose. And I was like, let me tell you something. I have a kid and I love him to pieces, but there is so much more to me than just being a mother. Or, you know, I felt so lost because there is that expectation of, once I have a kid, well, now you've got everything, you should just shut up and be happy. And I'm like, that's not enough. I want more. And, you know, I said to her, I was like, don't measure your don't measure on other people, but don't measure it on like what other people have and this expectation, like what you have. And I think I love that quote, having fun. Like, that's definitely, because for me, for a real long time, I look back, I wasn't having fun. I was miserable. And when I let go of all that stuff and the perfectionism, having fun.
Yep. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That Gabrielle Bernstein's onto something, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
She's got a big future ahead of her, that girl.
She's manifesting it.
Yeah.
So as we talk about like being an entrepreneur, the success and the numbers and all these things that play a role, you know, when it comes to having a purpose, and again, I feel like it's very similar to saying showing up authentically. It's like having a purpose. And I think you dialed it on this in the email that you sent. It was like having a purpose, like what, like it's really big pressure to know what your purpose is. And for a very long time, I was kind of like, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here. I'm just going to, you know, go with it, build a business, see what happens. What's my purpose? And even if I'm honest, I'm not 100% clear because I feel like it can be fluid and change. And I think this, I just shared a post. I think there's so many different facets to my business. I can't describe my job in like one easy sentence. But, you know, I truly feel like my purpose was always to help people, which turned into helping women, and dialing in on my skills. And you talked about this, about, you know, finding what you enjoy. And I think that's so important because I think, you know, I think Gary Vaynerchuk says it, like he could want to be Beyonce, but he's never going to be Beyonce because he can't sing the way she can. And it's finding that thing that you're good at and find that thing you're good at and you enjoy and dialing in on that. And you talked about this expectation, Jenna, about you going to university, and that so resonates with me because I thought up until I was I was about 16, which is when we have to make that choice. And I always assumed I was expected to go to university. And then my father had passed away. And so I suddenly was able to have these very honest conversations with my mom. And she was like, I don't care if you go to university. And it was like this, I was like, I remember just sitting in the car and I'm just looking at like, what do you mean you don't care? It's like, you're supposed to care. And that was it. And, you know, then nothing took the path it was supposed to, but the mess ended up leading to something really amazing. But, you know, when it comes to your purpose, like how have you been able to dial in on what you really enjoy and how you could, you know, spread your message about perfectionism and getting rid of perfectionism?
Yeah. Jenna, you want me to go or do you want me to go?
Would it make you happy if I said yes? No. Yes, please go. Yes. I want you to go.
Are you sure?
I'm absolutely sure.
I'm not editing any of this out, by the way.
No, authenticity right here. Yes.
I think for me, for the longest time, you know, I put so much pressure on myself to, you know, I wanted to go to school to be a naturopathic physician. I was going to be a physician by the time I was 27 and blah, blah, blah. I just had all of these crazy expectations for myself. And it wasn't even what I really was passionate about, you know? And I think that when we talk about purpose, we talk about like having a passion, you know, and finding that passion. And for me, I feel like I'm multi-passionate too, you know, and it takes like time to like get out there and experiment. Like if something, you know, if you're curious about something, go out and like try it, you know, because it might be, you might figure out like, this is my purpose. This is what I want to do. But I think for so many of us out there, we have to let go of the expectation that our purpose has to be something just out of this world, that it has to be just, when I think about like purpose and what I did in the past, I'm like, oh, I'm thinking Oprah, I'm thinking the Dalai Lama, I'm thinking, you know, all of these amazing writers, you know, and it's like, it doesn't have to be that. It really boils down to how do you want to create and design your life, you know, in your days? That is what it boils down to, your purpose every single day. How do you want to do that? Because you get to choose, you know. But for me, a big piece has been letting go that your purpose is attached to fame or, you know, having this much amount of money or, you know, popularity or likes or anything like that. Your purpose is beyond that. It's more internal. How do you feel? How do you want to create and design your life? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like another important factor is like getting to pick the sphere of influence that you want to have. Like we got an email the other day from someone who did the challenge who was kind of talking about like purpose, and she was saying, you know, people are telling me like, oh my God, you could do anything. You could do these huge things. You should do this. You should pursue this in your career. But that's not what I want. I want this thing that people think is smaller or somehow less desirable or not achieving my full potential, but that's what I want. Like, it's okay to choose a sphere of influence that's not Oprah.
Yeah.
You know, like for yeah, for the longest time in my career, I was like, I want to take it as macro as I can. I want it to be me and one other person. And if I can make an impact on that one person, that's the biggest success I could hope for.
Absolutely. Yes.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with or less than about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally resonate with that. When I mean, it was literally about a year ago. I left my 9 to 5, and for the 12 months prior, I was doing, building my business in my free time. And I remember as I was getting ready to leave, a few of the women that I worked with who I think they were probably in their 50s were saying like, but I'm happy with my life. And it was like this expectation of me to say, well, you shouldn't be. And I was like, we all want different things. We have different expectations. We want different things. And again, I think with social media and those show reels that we see, it's easy to go, oh, I want that because she has that. Or is that how I'm supposed to be? Is that what I'm supposed to be going for? And I'm aware of that. I'm very aware of that it can easily give off this, she's got it all and she's got her shit together. And so I'm always like, I haven't got my shit together, which is why you will see my, you know, Insta stories and things where it's like, it's real life. Cause I'm currently sitting here in unicorn pajama pants, right?
Awesome. I love it.
But, you know, it's not perfect, but it's like, that to me doesn't matter. You know, it's, that's that measure of purpose. As you said, like, I love the sphere, like that idea of it being, you know, not needing to be Oprah. Like, you know, if it's Oprah, if you know, cool, but
great,
whatever. Yeah. And as you say, impacting one person, I think that's the thing. A few years ago, I would have been so worried about how many views does this video get? How many people will it reach? It's like, if it reaches one person and one person goes, oh, that impacted me, then that's huge.
Yeah, it's enough, you know, because I think oftentimes that, you know, I feel like it's not enough. It needs to be more. It needs to be bigger, better, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's enough. It is totally enough. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. 100% enough. And I think, again, that's not something we say about ourselves enough, is that we are enough.
We are.
We are.
And we're enough even if we don't impact one person. Like, that's the thing. Remove the contingency, you know, but you don't have to impact one person to be enough. You already are.
Yeah.
And anything you do out in the world above and beyond that is just like gravy, you know?
Yes, definitely. Love it. Thank you, ladies. I would love for you to just share with my viewers 3 things that they could do that will remove or reduce the impact of perfectionism in their lives. Please. Who's going to go first?
Yes, I'll go first. First. I think one thing that's really helped me, and I think it helps a lot of other women too, is just knowing that when we talk about perfectionism, just like anything we try to like master in our lives, whether that's guitar or relationships or singing or writing or whatever it is, it's a practice, you know, it's a constant practice. And there may be days where you are feeling really successful and you're really aware of your perfectionism behaviors and things like that. And there may be days where it's, you know, they're rearing up left and right and you're having to like smack them back down. Just knowing that it is a practice, and that, I mean, I know from personal experience, I haven't gotten to the point where it's like, check it off. Cool. Perfectionism. Don't have to worry about that anymore. You know, stick with it. It's a practice. It's definitely a practice.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, to build on that, you know, kind of like what I was saying earlier, to try to just maintain an awareness around what's driving your behavior so that you have the opportunity to make choices. You're not just on an autopilot people-pleasing script where you're like not making a decision about brunch, or you're not on an autopilot script about like, I'm going to check all my stats for my business and see how I'm doing. You know, maintain an awareness of what's driving your desire to do certain things so that you can make a decision to either make a different choice or not. It's just about maintaining that awareness.
Yes. Love that.
And I think one of the other things, I think we've actually talked about this entire interview, is removing like the external expectations and really turning the awareness inward, like letting go of all like the external focus and focusing on yourself, you know, again, going back to how you want to feel, you know, tapping into that awareness, that intuition, that internal knowing that we all have, it's there. It just sometimes gets, you know, covered up with the comparison and all the bullshit, you know? So that I think is huge. That's a really, really important one too. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have loved having you on. We'll have to do another one at some point, and I've loved having you here. So I know that everyone is going to want so much more of you. Please tell us, or tell them, I'm already following you everywhere. Tell them how it is they can get more of you. They can hear more about your message. Where can they kind of find more of you and see more of you and everything else?
Well, we're at fperfect.com, which is EFFperfect.com. We're also, yes, or as we like to say, I don't know if we're allowed to say that.
You're allowed to do that. It's fine.
Show.
Yes, you can. Middle fingers up.
Yes. And we're at fperfect on Instagram. And then if people want to find out more or kind of get more information, they can take our pledge, which is at it's at fperfect.com/pledge. You'll get our Middle Finger to Perfection menu, which gives you tons of ideas about little and big things that you can do in your daily life to just give perfection the bird and, you know, challenge it. And so if you're interested, we'd love to have you over on our site, and we would love to have you on our podcast, Melanie. Not to put you on the spot.
Yes. I would love to. That would be an absolute honor. Yes. So you also have a podcast, and it's so awesome. There's a little thing that you do.
Yes.
And it's so amazing. I will make sure to link to everything in the show notes of this video. So guys, you can access them, find them, take the pledge. I've taken the pledge. Middle fingers up.
Yes.
Yep.
It's great. I love it. I love it so much. Thank you so much for being here. And I would love to be on your podcast. I cannot wait to.
Yay.
I know. Yes.
I'm so excited.
Perfect. No, not perfect. See, we did this last time. Imperfect.
I know.
Imperfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you, Melanie.